controller conversation for the ages, or at least the opinionated comment sections, sparked since the dawn of time. At least November of '01 when Microsoft dropped the original Xbox.
Well, I would think that...
It doesn't matter what you think, Bill.
Xbox controllers versus PlayStation controllers. Stock Sony or OEM Microsoft. Factory Xbox or out-of-the-box PlayStation. This is your controller captain. We've reached 6,900 feet. Go ahead and start flicking the sticks and mollywopping the back paddles. You don't like back paddles? How about those rear buttons? We've tested almost 100 custom and premium controllers, and we're only at the beginning. You need a thumbstick guide or tutorial on how to overclock your controller? Check out the controller playlist. Bing bong. Controller captain out. A quick note right off Jump Street. This is not a comparison of the Microsoft Elite 2 and the Sony DualSense Edge, so the first-party premium controllers from both manufacturers. Rather, we're taking a look at the stalkers, the OEM factory controllers that everyone receives with their consoles. Another note that means mention, sentimental value is not graded in this comparison whatsoever, so just because you've spent countless nights passing out with PlayStation Plastic or Microsoft Gamepad in your hands, that's not going to earn any points in this comparison. What it's going to come down to is a nitty-gritty bloodbath. Over 10 categories, these controllers will go back and forth, hacking and slashing on each other. Things like, what is better, symmetrical or side-by-side PlayStation thumbsticks or offset Xbox thumbsticks? Who handles the battery situation better? The disposables that Microsoft has been using forever, this is a bad example because the Elite has a built-in battery, or the internal rechargeable battery pack on board the DualSense, 1560 milliamp hour. Not on the DualSense Edge, sweetheart, that's tiny. This comparison is not console-based, the features of the Xbox versus the PlayStation. I do own a PlayStation and an Xbox. We're strictly looking at the controllers, such as if you're playing on PC and have the option of using either gamepad. We are going to touch on some of the console-only specific features like haptic feedback and adaptive triggers. There is a program called DSX for PC that pumps in those two features, gets the drivers for PC. I'm going to make a separate video. It's not a true native one-to-one what you're used to on the PS5. As for price, as of currently, yes, I'm using Amazon because that is a pretty good gauge of price. It kind of goes with the ebb and flow of virtually every other vendor, but currently a DualSense controller is $70, which is the recommended retail and has been since the launch of the console. There is other colorways, of course, such as Galactic Purple and this Please Me Pink over here. Here in the licensed Microsoft store, we have $68 for a stock controller. Now, this does fluctuate. I do see these controllers go quite frequently for around $45 to $50 in brand new in-box condition. So if you're just trying to pick up a cheap first-party controller, you're usually going to be able to pick up an Xbox controller cheaper than a PlayStation DualSense, and this comes down to, well, the manufacturing costs are more on the DualSense. It is using more expensive components. For example, it has an internal battery, and the Xbox controller doesn't. It uses haptic feedback motors, not the Rumble Force motors. It has adaptive trigger motors, which is an entire new component, and I'm sure isn't cheap. It has a built-in microphone. It has a touchpad. It has a lot of features that the Xbox controllers don't. So price or value simply is not going to be graded because I think both of these controllers are doing exactly what they should for their consoles, their fans, their key demographic of gamers. So price is a tie. As for packaging and included accessories, neither controller is going to include a USB-C cable as the manufacturers expect you're going to use the cable that came with your console, or since they both use USB-C and that's kind of the universal connection method now, you probably have one laying around from something. But I'm going to give packaging and included accessories to Xbox because the overall presentation is a little bit sweeter. It opens up to glance at you and say, hey, you going to be playing with me? Because I want to play with you. Accessories on the one, which is really, oh mama. As with the PlayStation, your controller is held in a moisture wicking bag. Their whole logic is you already got a USB-C cable with your PlayStation 5. Turn around, touch your toes, and go ahead and fuck yourself. Oh my god. All right. Not to mention, Xbox gives you, I do believe it is 2 weeks or a month of free Game Pass. It's like that local crack dealer. They give you a little taste of the goods, and then before you know it, you're scratching your way back to them, and you're paying for Game Pass because it's a damn fine value. But with the Xbox controllers, you lift up the block in the box, and there's a little undercarriage that has a free trial to Game Pass, a decent instruction manual, Xbox, better packaging, but they're both pretty shitty. Now, if you buy an Xbox Series X, the controller is going to be black. If you buy a Series S, because you're broke like I was when I bought that console, it's going to be white, but it's the same controller at the end of the day. The PS5 ecosystem is that reversed Oreo design that Sony decided to go with, white on the outside, black on the inside. That extends to the console, the PSVR 2 headset, the Sense controllers, the DualSense controllers, the charging dock, the media remote. I simply don't like it. I will say I think their blacked out controller actually looks pretty good, but if I were to have to judge the cosmetics of this controller and this controller, they're both pretty gosh damn hideous. I do have a lot of build videos on this channel, how to make your controller not look like these anymore. Honestly, honestly, I'm gonna give cosmetics a draw just because I hate this cheap plastic chin piece. It is some of the worst plastics I've ever seen, but to even out just the hatred on both sides here, just to distribute that hatred properly, I know that this is typical Xbox fanfare with the colored face buttons, and it looks cool on some controllers. However, on a stalker, it just looks cheap. I'd prefer if these were blacked out on the black controller, black with gray lettering, the exact buttons that come on the Elite Series 2. And if you got the white version because you bought a Series S, silver or gray with white lettering, that would look even cooler. And the Xbox button was whited out or grayed out, that would look really cool. I'm gonna give the cosmetics a tie for just being dog-ass ugly. I'm not calling either of them. I'm giving them a fake number. But now I want to quickly touch on licensed first-party limited edition controllers, and I think Microsoft blows this out of the water because they have a lot more attention to detail. We're talking about Easter eggs inside the battery tray cover. We're talking about etched or scraped in patterns in the palm grips that you can actually feel the texture of. We're talking about changing the color of the face buttons and D-pad, the triggers, the thumbstick bases, literally every component custom painted or tweaked in some way, as were the limited edition licensed Sony controllers. Here's an Uncharted DualSense that's basically like haze gray. You know, point there for Microsoft always having better limited edition controllers, cooler, more attention to detail, more intricate with the customization. Further note to that, Microsoft has what's called Design Lab, so you can actually customize the colorway of virtually every component of these controllers. Manufacturers' weight and dimensions for both these controllers, manufacturers being Microsoft and Sony, since these are both first parties, gonna be popping up on screen in or around my face, but far enough away to where there's no lawsuits involved, because there's already pending lawsuits with Microsoft and Sony. Now, weight and dimensions is a valuable segment because everyone likes to read numbers, tech specs, if you will. But as far as the real world practical comfort, when you wrap your fingers around the plastic shell, the haunches, the palm grips of both of these gamepads, both are wildly comfortable, but the shell design of the Xbox 360, One, and Series controllers have been superior in my opinion. I will say that the DualSense is a big step up for medium and larger hands from the DualShock 4 of the PS4, but the actual ergonomics are better on the Xbox controller, which is quite interesting because I prefer the symmetrical or side-by-side sticks of a PlayStation controller, but the shell design, the shape of an Xbox controller, and awkwardly enough, I don't think Xbox controllers would be as comfortable as they are if they had symmetrical sticks, and I don't think PlayStation controllers would be as comfortable as they are if they had offset sticks. Truly intriguing. But what makes stock Xbox controllers more comfortable than stock PlayStation controllers is going to be the stippling on the back. Not only does it provide a little bit more grip. Grip is something I hear a lot in the comment section and whatnot. You do get more grip with this little stippling. There is small PlayStation face buttons or symbols along the back of a DualSense controller. Looks cool, provides a little bit of grip, but you do get more with the Series X controllers. Combined with that ergonomic shell design that is just the joy to hold for hours on end, Xbox, more comfortable. But as far as build quality, the DualSense absolutely shites and doesn't wipe all over the Xbox controller. This just feels so much more durable. I will say I hate the plastic trim piece. This feels very cheap to the fingers, but other than these plastics being parts bin special, everything feels a lot more buttoned down on the DualSense controller. I think what makes Xbox controllers feel cheaper than PlayStation controllers is a couple of factors. You do have this removable battery tray that removes a little bit of that structural rigidity or integrity. Then you also have these side panels which pop off. You've seen it a dozen times during disassemblies or teardowns on the channel. Then you have another separate piece for the bumpers in the center section. As we're on the DualSense, it's a lot less individual parts. You don't have those side panels or a removable battery tray. Everything's just one piece. It's definitely not one piece or component, but it feels more like one solid piece. Now, as far as a warranty system, the DualSense does have a 1-year warranty, which is pretty standard, acceptable, I guess you could say. As for on the Microsoft, you're getting a 90-day or 3-month warranty. And as this article mentions, the warranty recently was extended on the Elite Series 2, as that carried a 3-month warranty as well. And I always found that just so silly, so harebrained that a premium or pro controller that's like triple the price of a standard controller carried the same warranty, the same 90-day warranty. Now that is bumped up to a year, but their factory controllers, their stockers, is still 90 days. 1 year on the DualSense. Sony wins this round. Moving right into quality control, because I think that plays into warranty, because hopefully you never need to activate that warranty. This isn't comparable either, as Microsoft gets held down and gets the shit beat out of them by PlayStation, and nobody jumps in for about 30 seconds, and PlayStation gets so many licks in. Microsoft has horrendous quality control, not only on their standard controllers, but unfortunately also on the Elite 1 and Elite Series 2 Pro controllers, as where the PS3, 4, and 5 don't have as bad of a quality control reputation. I will say, play devil's advocate over here, there is a class action lawsuit for stick drift on the DualSense controllers, as the modules are sourced from the exact same manufacturers as the Nintendo Joy-Cons, which are notorious for stick drift. Having said that, if you just ask around the controller community, read a Reddit forum and whatnot, you're going to find hundreds or thousands of horror stories of stuck face buttons, broken bumpers, and out-of-the-box stick drift on Xbox controllers. A much smaller community of disgruntled gamers with the DualShock and the DualSense. Quality control seems to be much better at the Sony factory. I hope that extends to their Edge Pro controller, but since it is so new, it's too early to tell with that one. As for the D-pad or direction buttons, Xbox decided to jump away from the 4-point D-pad of the Xbox One and go with the hybrid on the Series, which is basically a wheel and also somewhat of a 4-point in there as well. Now, both these controllers sport a membrane design, meaning there's a rubber plunger mechanism underneath this front shell that makes contact with the PCB whenever you press down the D-pad. But they do feel quite a bit different, and the Xbox does feel better. I think it's a lot more tactile, clicky, responsive. It is quite a bit noisier, so that's a downside. But because of that hybrid wheel, you are able to do roll-offs and just fluidly, smoothly change motion on the D-pad, which is great if you play a lot of retro platformers or fighting games, a lot of beat-em-ups. This is pretty sweet, IMO in my personal opinion. The Sony D-pad looks cooler cosmetically on this white version and also in all the limited edition versions as well. At the end of the day, what's most important here is the actual feel, and it does feel better on the Xbox controller. It's quieter on the DualSense, which is cool, but it does feel very squishy, very mushy. When you press down on left, it lifts up on right. Ugh. And you just don't get a nice confirmation that you press the button. Everything just feels kind of sloppy and just, you know. It works though. I'm not like saying it's unusable. It's not as good as the Xbox. It just beats the hell out of it in this category. Let's get some stands. I paid for the suckers. Might as well bust them out on the table and put these things on display. Okay, you go right there, and your friend, or enemy, whatever, is going to go right here. We shall line up and face the good people. They're that way. Now, as for the face or action buttons, since both these controllers, again, sport a membrane design, there's that rubber plunger mechanism that actuates the switches. This is a very common design. It's been used for decades in controllers. However, these are prone to failure, but luckily, usually the failure is just that rubber plunger gets all gummed up, but that does require you removing the faceplate, partial disassembly of the controller, taking a Q-tip with a little isopropyl alcohol and cleaning that bad boy off, reassembling that bad boy and having a good day. That's a little bit more DIY or involvement in controllers than a lot of people would like to have. I also prefer the feel of mechanical switches that are generally rated for millions of clicks. They're faster to actuate and they just feel better to me. But you're generally not going to find those switches in an entry or budget level controller or a stock controller like this. I'm not going to talk about the appearance of the face buttons because that was covered during the cosmetic section, so we're strictly talking about the feel of the face buttons here. This isn't much of a comparison for me. I greatly prefer the DualSense. The buttons are flat or substantially flatter than the very round buttons on the Xbox. And while the travel is virtually identical for both of these controllers, it definitely feels like it's a much shorter travel to actuate the switches on the DualSense, and you get a nice tactile click and then a nice little pop back or rebound to its default position. I like these quite a bit, actually. Oh boy. Those just sound hollow and cheap. A lot of side-to-side play in them, actually, and they're also very rounded, glossy as all hell. They get the job done. They work for gaming. I mean, I can't even count how many games I've beaten you smacking the face buttons of an Xbox controller, but how do you want it? Left cheek or right cheek? But if these two were cellmates, things are not looking good for Xbox during this segment. I'll leave you two alone. I'll bring you some toilet sangria, a little pruno to set the mood. Now, as for the accessory button suite, that is going to be the pause and share button, as well as the touchpad, PlayStation button, mic mute button, and speakers on the PlayStation controller. And over here on the Xbox, pause and options, share button, which was a nice addition. We didn't have that on the Xbox One. And then, of course, the Xbox home button, pairing button on top as well. While it is a welcome addition to have the share button on the Xbox Series controllers, I'm going to have to give this segment to PlayStation, as they do have a touchpad, which is usable in damn near every game. You can usually scroll through maps and submenus and whatnot with the old sucker. It also works as a button. Then there's these lights around the outside, which come into play during games, maybe flashing red and blue when cops are behind you in Grand Theft Auto. Just a little feature to add to the immersion. Another one of those little gimmicky features that adds to immersion. There's a speaker right there. You thought it was just a blank speaker grill? No sir, no ma'am. There's a little driver under there, and it's driving sound towards your face. It's interesting when there's sound coming out of your lap in combination with the haptic feedback doing some crazy vibration in your hand. hand, and then you got the adaptive triggers dancing on your fingers. All those little Sony gimmicky features come together to make some wowzer moments. I do prefer the Xbox buttons layout over the PlayStation button layout. It's a large circle, although it's pretty much flush with the front shell. I wish it was raised a little bit. But the PlayStation logo, as cool as it looks, is not the easiest thing to hit sometimes. You also have a mic mute button down here. Little or well-known, I guess, factoid. If you hold down this button, not only does it mute your microphone, it actually mutes all of your PlayStation sound. It'll mute your TV, your soundbar, your surround sound, whatever the hell you're listening to. It'll mute all your game sounds by holding down that mic mute button. And the last feature that falls into the accessory button segment would be the built-in microphone. Your headset dies, you're still calmed up with your buddies, and you can also browse some applications with your voice, such as YouTube. Trying to find your favorite Gamer Heaven controller review from a couple years back? I wouldn't advise it. The quality bar was pretty low on my videos from back then. Maybe some of my videos from like 8 months ago? Use voice to search. Starting with the thumbstick bases, this is going to go to Sony because the DualSense does come out of the box with anti-friction rings, so you're going to glide along smooth plastic when you're at full lock around the outside of the thumbstick gates. And you only get this in the aftermarket of some Xbox controllers. Next, we move to the shape of the thumbstick caps. On the PlayStation 4 DualShock and the PlayStation 5 DualSense, Sony uses what's called hybrid sticks that are both concaved and the other one convexed. I don't have any complaints, but these certainly aren't my favorite shape, but I will say the rubber or silicone compound that they use is actually pretty grippy as long as you keep it wiped off of any grease in your hands. So just use your shirt, wipe the grease off, and these bad boys will stay grippy for you. And on the Xbox, they're using short concave sticks. I would actually prefer this design if they were a little bit larger, but because they're pretty small, pretty narrow, it just isn't the most comfortable thing for me to rest my thumbs in. And you combine that with the fact that the outside is pretty slippery. That rubber actually doesn't provide much grip around the outside. Granted, it does look kind of cool with mini stippling or texturing on there. I'm giving thumbstick caps to Sony, but it's not a huge deal either way because there's a company called Control Freaks that makes thumbstick caps that are the bee's knees and the mule's nips, and you pop those on there and you have extra height, you have extra grip, you got a little cosmetic pop of sexiness. Now moving on to a hot topic that's actually much more of a lukewarm or even not even that hot of a topic, and that is going to be symmetrical or side-by-side PlayStation thumbsticks versus offset Xbox thumbsticks. I do have a preference and I'll get to it in just a minute, but I will say it really doesn't matter. As somebody that bounces back and forth between Xbox and PlayStation controllers, I never think about, oh my god, these thumbsticks are weird, or it's kind of silly having these side by side. Even though it looks like it's such a big design aspect, shape and design of this controller is meant to have the sticks like this, and the shape and design of this one's meant to have the sticks like that, they both feel hella comfortable, and I don't, yeah. Having said that, I did bounce back and forth for the longest time. I actually preferred Xbox for years up until about 8 months ago, and now I do indeed prefer symmetrical or side-by-side PlayStation sticks. Now, I did mention in a previous video just a day or two ago that a lot of the third-party modular controllers like the Victrix BFG Pro, the Astro C40, the Thrustmaster controllers that allow you to swap between symmetrical or offset sticks, they actually put the sticks closer together than a stock PlayStation controller. So that's a note to keep in mind. You never really run your thumbs into each other when you're playing on a PlayStation controller, unless you have like a grip where you purposely hold it like that, but you probably don't. You're just a normal person. This section simply cannot be graded because it comes down to personal preference. You could say that about a lot of the sections in this video. I don't know, but this section for sure can't even, in good conscience, go to bed at night sleeping and snoozing and drooling on the pillow, judging one or the other because they're both, daddy loves them both. You know what? This is actually a really old DualSense. This is actually the oldest DualSense controller that I have laying around the house, and axes 0, 1, 2, and 3 are still at 0.0002, which means the resting value is still as tight as ever, which is very good. There's absolutely zero drift. I will say there are slightly bigger dead zones than I'd like to see in Gamepad Tester. As I start to provide input, it doesn't actually jump that dot until right there. So just lightly feathering over those thumbsticks, they don't actually start registering until about 0.2. Interesting. However, in game, you never notice fat dead zones on PlayStation controllers. I go back and forth between Xbox and PlayStation controllers, and I'm never blown away by the dead zones on either. Let's measure the circularity, which is going to give us our thumbstick accuracy, which on a PlayStation controller is going to be between 8 and 12%. Well, if it's lower than that, good for you. If it's higher than that, something's wrong. Bingo was his name-o. So no areas where our thumbstick movement is not going to be properly registered. Down here, it looks a little bit wonky. It's not fully reaching the outside of the thumbstick gates, but I'm not going to write Sony a letter about it or anything. Get the Xbox in here, please. Bring him in. Also, the oldest Xbox Series controller. This came with my Xbox Series S many moons ago, a fortnight ago, if you will. Oh, kablammy. Okay. So if you don't put these dogs on a leash, they will wander the yard, i.e., you know, I'm feathering these thumbsticks and then I stop. My thumbs are off now. And these are not at 0.0002, which is a very, very common resting value for well-calibrated potentiometer thumbsticks in my experience. You might be wondering, what the fuck is your experience? Hours spent in gamepad tester, bloodshot eyes, sweat, tears, any fluid you can imagine secreting from my body. A lot of grind time in gamepad tester, reading the numbers mason. As you can see, these are not as taut, but on the flip token, as soon as I start providing input, I have full control over these thumbsticks, meaning that there isn't that large apparent dead zone. This isn't dramatic enough to give you out of the box stick drift, but as soon as I move those thumbsticks, inputs are being registered. Let's test the circularity. I did go a little fast. That might be where this red is coming from. Yeah. Oh, fuck me sideways. The more I go, the more it shows that the thumbsticks are wonky on this one. Particularly the right stick. You know, that's just aiming. That's the important one, actually. But as far as overall feel, I'm going to give it to PlayStation, as I do prefer the symmetrical or side-by-side layout. I think you get a little bit more grippy caps here. You get those anti-friction rings. Clicking down L3 and R3 does feel a little bit more secure and not as rattly. And you've got the same aftermarket available with Control Freaks and also universal slip-over caps. PlayStation, thumbsticks department takes it home, rams it home. Seems like it's time to move around some equipment and set up the next segment or section of the video. So but I'll do it. You just kick back, get a brew, get a beverage. Hit the subscribe button if you want, at least the like. She's been neglected on this video because the video just went live like a few minutes ago. You're one of the first to just like it. Like the hell out of it. More people can see it. And then they can chime in the comment section and be like, well, I grew up with Xbox controllers. This guy doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. Comparing them on all these categories and stuff. Now, bumpers are substantially different on Xbox and PlayStation controllers. The only difference from Xbox One to Series is they were shaved in a little bit smaller, a few millimeters smaller on the Series, and they added this ribbed or stippling texture on the triggers. Ergonomically, they're in a good position where you want to naturally rest your hands. You can actuate them with the meat of your index finger or the tip. They work and they work well. What works okay, but just slightly not as good, is these little tiny bumpers over here, which the plastics that they went with, the surface material does feel buttery smooth on your fingers, but these tiny little bumpers, if you're somebody that has large fingers and you like to use the tips of your index fingers to press bumpers, you're not pressing anything. Press these little guys like that, which is fine because that's where you want to naturally rest your hand anyway, but Xbox bumpers are just simply better. Size-wise, ergonomic, shapes, pretty much everything except that plastic feeling, which feels like a little treat massage for my fingers. But now to even things back out, we gotta talk about triggers, and that story is completely different. Xbox hasn't really innovated in the trigger department, as where PlayStation decided to introduce adaptive triggers, which are these motors that get stiffer or lighter depending on what's happening on screen. Maybe you're pulling back a bow, or maybe a racing game where every car has a different feeling gas and brake. All guns have a different trigger breaking point in shooters, stuff like that. Now, in some games, these can actually be very hard to press, so if you're having any issues where you're getting finger fatigue, or they're just a pain in the ass to use, you can go in the settings and turn down the strength of the motors to medium or low, and you'll still get that effect, it's just not as strong. I'm gonna give triggers to PlayStation. Let's talk a little bit about vibrators. The Xbox has been using the same technology for decades. It's rumble force motors, nothing wrong with it, it gets the job done, but it's a little bit sloppy toppy. They are noisy, they create a little bit of a rattle on the plastics inside the palm grip. The PlayStation controllers have haptic feedback motors. B-roll of a disassembly or teardown I did of a DualSense controller on screen here, you can see an actual physical difference between these haptic feedback motors and the typical rumble force motors, and they do make a night and day difference. Peak strength, they can really rattle the ever-living hell out of your hand, but most importantly, more than all of that, is going to be accuracy. We've seen the introduction of haptics with cell phones like the BlackBerry Storm decades ago, and we see it in things like the Nintendo Joy-Con. Your iPhone has haptics in it, but the DualSense is by far the culmination of it's the best and most accurate haptics I've experienced, and I've tested a lot of consumer electronic gadgets and gizmos. All third-party games, Call of Duty, FIFA, they're going to make use of the haptics, but first-party SIE, Sony Interactive Entertainment titles, really make good on this, to where when you're crunching on sand or you're pulling back a bow, you really do get immersed into what the hell you're doing. So no brainer there, vibration goes to the PlayStation controller. What about this battery situation? My Microsoft has been using disposable AA's for the longest time. In the Xbox 360 controller, they were vertical in this little battery pack that you had to snap in. And then with the Xbox One and Series, they still use two AA batteries. As where the DualSense controller ships with an internal 1560 milliamp hour battery, which sounds quite hefty on paper, but with all the features of the DualSense, the haptic feedback, the adaptive triggers, the built-in microphone that's constantly listening, the lights, RGB lights flashing around the touchpad, it drains the ever-living hell out of the battery, so you're usually looking at between 4 to 10 hours of battery life if you're wondering why there's such a huge gap there. I do have a video where I go through some features in the PS5 where you can really extend your battery life if you don't mind missing out on some immersive features. But I actually like Microsoft's approach. Now, I do wish that they did include a rechargeable battery pack, no dock necessary or cradle or anything like that. It would just charge to the USB-C port on the top of the controller. They have an included battery pack, but then if it goes completely dead, you can just pop in some disposables. That's fantastic. As it is, you do need to source yourself a rechargeable battery pack on Amazon. They're about $20 to $30, usually come with 2 batteries and a charger, so you can constantly hot swap them and you never run out of battery life. I actually like Microsoft's approach here, taking disposable batteries, because you have the option. Yes, you have to pop another $20 for the kit, but you have the option. And when you're using disposable AA batteries, they last long. Rechargeable AA batteries don't last as long, but the disposables generally last longer, and then you chuck them out and spend a small fortune on them. Even though Xbox has already won the battery debacle, just to put a couple more nails in that coffin, the first party Elite Series 2 has an advertised battery life of 40 hours, which is savagely underestimated. You can squeeze out some savage sessions out of this thing, and standby time is ridiculous. I have placed this in a drawer for months, pulled it out of a drawer, gamed for a couple days, put it back in a drawer, came back weeks later, still had a charge. The DualSense Edge also has wild battery life, but on the opposite end of the spectrum. I've actually got a session of about 3 hours and 50 minutes on this controller, because it has a 1050 milliamp hour battery, which is almost as small as the DualShock, which had a 1000 milliamp hour. About an hour and a half will get you 3 indicated bars on screen, and then you got 3 hours of gameplay. If you wanted a reminder about the stock input lag or delay on an Xbox controller, you're gonna get it. You're gonna get it right now. Seeing a lot of 8s in there. 8 milliseconds on a 125 hertz clock. So after running multiple back-to-back polls, the results are in. It says we're getting an average of 12 milliseconds. That's simply incorrect. We have one large outlier, which is going to be one large number at the top. And this bad boy is going to throw off our numbers. But if you do a little technical analysis and scroll through the numbers manually, you will see a lot of 7.8s in there, a lot of 8 point jibbity, whatever. But rest assured, Xbox controllers get 8 milliseconds of input lag or delay when connected to a PC. How about PlayStation? I think it might be a little bit lower, like half as low. And I think via an overclock, it can actually get down to about 1/8 the speed of an Xbox controller. It's not a guess. That guy's done it before. I've watched his videos where he did it. Now, when we go to test our PS5 DualSense, it's going to tell us there's no 360 controller found. That's absolutely correct. Luckily, there are about 4 programs that you can run on PC to force compatibility. Now, if you're just trying to play games on a PC with a PlayStation controller, no problem if you're using Steam, as it does all the driver work for you in the background. But if you're using other launchers, there is going to be some issues for you until you run one of these programs. There's DS4 Windows, which is a joy. It's for the DS4, the DualShock 4, and also the DualSense for PlayStation. There's a program called Rewaz, which is used for all kinds of controllers. Then there's a program called Input Mapper, and then there's DSX, which is a $5 buy on Steam. Let's do DS4 Windows. She's tried, she's true. Been using her for many moons. Full tutorial of DS4 Windows coming in the near future, because you can do a lot of amazing things, such as controlling the lighting of your controller, forcing compatibility, overclocking Bluetooth, and tightening dead zones. But now that we launched this program, we're just going to minimize it to the background. Do not close it or it will stop forcing compatibility with the PC. Let's close this, relaunch it. Now she's ready for us. She says, go ahead and give it to me. And we shall. Moving the left stick in a circle. Seeing a lot of 3.9s, 4.0s. It's 4 milliseconds of input lag or delay on a 250 hertz stock clock. Also, something else to note, the minimum and maximum are also so much tighter on PlayStation controllers, meaning that wired connection with PC is a lot more consistent as well, which is so gosh darn weird considering Microsoft Windows, Microsoft Xbox. These controllers should communicate seamlessly with the PC, and they do as far as compatibility is concerned. They work with fucking everything, but PlayStation controllers are superior in the fact that they have half the input lag or delay on PC when wired. Also wirelessly, in a previous video, I did get to 2 milliseconds. Actually, it was around 1.9. I don't know, I got out of breath there. I was really excited about it because it was very exciting. Around 1.9 milliseconds of input lag or delay via Bluetooth wirelessly to my PC with a DualSense controller. And all day I can get a DualSense under 1 millisecond of input lag or delay, around 0.93 when wired. You're not going to get that with an Xbox controller as they are polling rate locked. I do still recommend overclocking them as it will make the controller more consistent. The minimum and maximum spread spread on your test and X input tests will become smaller, tighter. 20 over here and 7,000 over here, it'll be, look at this right here, 1 and 11. That's a tight little spread. That means that out of all these inputs, they're not varying or differing that much. Also, jitter, lower number, better. And usually I see smaller numbers on PlayStation controllers. There's your stock polling rate, 250 hertz. Going into the settings of your PlayStation, which is the cog icon in the top right, come down to accessories near the bottom of the gutter. In Corporal, I need you to go talk to the General, which is a controller over here. You can control the strength of your adaptive triggers, haptic feedback. You can dim the lights of your controller, which I recommend to save battery life. If you're trying to play wired to the PS5, just plugging in the USB-C cable is still utilizing the Bluetooth connection and just charging via USB-C, so switch this over to use USB-C cable. I have heard in a recent patch or update that this has been fixed, and now whenever you plug in a USB cable, it just automatically switches it to the wired or tethered mode, as it should have the whole time. Still, just ticker over to wired if you're trying to go wired on the PS5. Controller speaker coming on loud as hell, scaring the piss out of you in the middle of the night. You can't mute it, but you can turn it down all the way. Something to note, when you are using a headset, a wireless or wired headset on a PlayStation, it will mute the controller speaker, or at least it's supposed to. As we're on the Xbox, you have full diagnostics and remapping, and you might be wondering why I'm talking in front of the TV instead of screen capturing like the PlayStation. That would require me hooking up my Xbox to a capture card, and that's the work. To get here, go into settings and scroll yourself down to accessories and devices and connections. It'd be kind of cool if it knew if you had the white or black version of the controller, but it's always going to show the black variant. That little lab beakered icon down there is going to be a diagnostic tool, so if you have a jammed up face button, you can just run through one by one and figure out what the hell's going on. And then when you're done, had good fun, you're going to press the options and pause buttons together to exit the diagnostic. And from here, you have a lot of control. You can swap the sticks if you're a psychopath, swap the triggers if you like to play upside down on your couch. You can do a bunch of fun stuff here. Most importantly, you can actually map what the share button does. So do you want to take a screenshot when you double press, hold it down, etc. And now that we created a profile, it's just stored on the Xbox, but to get it loaded to the controller, you're going to select it right here. I'm going to give it to Microsoft. As for modes of connectivity, with both of these controllers, you can go wired to their consoles as well as Windows 10 or 11 PCs. There is spotty Mac support for both of these controllers as well, but you can download some driver packs and force compatibility, but you're probably not gaming on a Mac anyway. Now, PlayStation 4 and 5 controllers are using Bluetooth to communicate with their consoles, as where Xbox uses Xbox Wireless, which is a dedicated RF frequency. It's not a 2.4 gigahertz band. It's not 5G either. It's its own dedicated RF frequency, so it doesn't get interference with other wireless devices in your room. Separate shorter video coming in the near future on the topic of what exactly is Xbox Wireless, but I pretty much just summarized it there. But to get that compatibility on PC, you do need to pop $25 for this licensed Windows adapter for Xbox. You plug this into one of the USB ports on your PC and you get that dedicated wireless connection exactly like you're getting on the console. Now, all Xbox Series controllers do have Bluetooth support, as do a lot of the Xbox One variants. When Microsoft did the midlife refresh of the Xbox One console, introducing the One S and X, the controllers changed from having this chin or lip and no Bluetooth support to this version. That's the easiest way to pick out if your Xbox One controller has Bluetooth support or not. Does it have this little chin or lip section? If it does, unfortunately that model does not. So as for the cons, pros, and verdict, you came here to party, Doritos, blow, and beer, and let's get rowdy. Let's start doing keg stands and whipping our shirts over our head. And I ain't no 60 frames per second. She's glipping on me. Talking head commentary. What do you need 60 frames per second for? Is there an update running in the background or something? Okay. Well, it's quite interesting because these controllers go back and forth, and there are aspects that I like of both. The most notable and important is going to be the shell design. The ergonomic shape of Xbox controllers, I think, is amazing. I have yet to really find a stock or aftermarket controller that feels as good as an Xbox controller in the hand. Weird, because I like the symmetrical or lined up sticks of a PlayStation controller. As I stand here drenched in blood from being the closest spectator to these controllers as they clawed and gouged their way for that golden crown, that goose knuckle that is the gamer heaven stamp of approval, the stamp and sigil from the desk of AK40 Kevin, that big, long, girthy L desk, unnecessary desk space. There is no pros and cons section here because the entire video was stacking up each component or part. The DualSense controller is a better controller, hands down. It uses haptic feedback motors as opposed to rumble force motors. It uses adaptive triggers as opposed to not. There's less input lag on the PC. You're most likely going to be using the native controller that came with your console. However, that's not really the case. I have reviewed a bunch of adapters from a company called Brooks, and those allow you to go interplay platform, because in this day and age, I don't think we should be segregating platforms and controllers like that. It actually disgusts me that we're still practicing like that. So it is very comforting to my soul when I see Xbox controllers mingling with PlayStations, and PlayStation controllers getting along with Xboxes, and Nintendo Switch controllers sitting down for meals on retro consoles. It's how it should be. There shouldn't be this platform segregation. It's, you know, 2023, bitch. Breaking down walls. So even with those limitations removed, I could play PlayStation controllers on Xbox. How it ends up going down is I'm going to use the native controller for that console, because that just seems the most natural, the most fluid to me. When I'm playing Halo, it feels weird if I look down and I'm got a DualSense in my hand. If I'm playing Uncharted, Nathan Drake's going to look at me a little bit stern if I have an Elite 2 in my hand. But Sony definitely does more with the controllers. There hasn't really been a lot of changes, and you might be like, well, you don't want to reinvent the wheel or don't want to update perfection or whatever the hell you want to say. But from the Xbox 360 to the One to the Series, the controllers remained quite unchanged. Like I mentioned, shaving a few millimeters on the bumpers, adding a share button, a hybrid D-pad wheel, subtle changes, better stippling or texture on the grips. But from the PS3 to 4, PlayStation added a light bar and a touchpad and increased trigger resistance and changed the thumbsticks from dome to hybrid. They make huge controller changes. Oh yeah, added a speaker into the controller. But with each generational leap of the PlayStation home consoles, the controllers went along with it, and it feels like with Xbox, the controllers and user interface, the operating system, are left behind. For example, the OS on an Xbox Series is like identical to an Xbox One, which is kind of cool. Yay, there's no learning curve. But when you spend $500 and want a next-gen experience, you kind of expect when you boot up your console for the first time to be like, holy shit, I got that new console, not, oh, this is like the same one I've been playing on. And that could not be more apparent than with the controllers, which is the most important thing with a console, because it's the interface between you and your game. The native input, it's what you're using to control your character. And PlayStation's doing it better. All those little gimmicky features come together in quite a nice package to make games not only more immersive, but also if you want to get down to just nitty-gritty things like, well, the warranty is 4 times longer on PlayStation controllers, and the input lag or delay is half on PC, and they can be overclocked. So whether we're just going on human emotion of damn, PlayStation controllers feel better, or we're going on tech specs of still, but it's not a one-sided beatdown by any means. It's not like the Xbox controller is like mending its wounds because it got the ever-living fuck beat out of it, and the PlayStation controller is, you know, getting shagged silly by some fly honeys or anything like that. Like I mentioned, the ergos, the comfort of the shell design is perfect on an Xbox controller. It's got that going for it. Yeah, PlayStation makes better controllers. There it is. You just opened a floodgate of fanboys that ain't gonna dry up no time soon. You better get yourself a chamois and a blankie. If you enjoyed the video, liking it helps it to get seen by more gamers. This information will reach and assist them as well, which in turn helps me grow this little channel, which I do greatly appreciate. Subscribe for more content like this. I cover news in the gaming community and industry, tutorials helping you get set up streaming and YouTubing, as well as honest gaming product reviews, keyboards, mice, headsets, controllers, mics, chairs, etc. There are some hefty exclusive discount codes found only in the description of my videos, and only for the audience here at Gamer Heaven. I have links to all my other platforms and socials in the description below. To get in touch with myself and the Stallions and Stallionettes of Gamer Heaven, join the community Discord, and check me out at twitch.tv, where I go live every other leap year on a blue moon, if it falls into an odd calendar number, and my pH balance is on point. Just kidding, starting June I'm going to be live streaming a lot. Thanks for watching. This has been AK40 Kevin hosting Gamer Heaven, and I'll see you tomorrow, because I upload daily. All the time. 60% of the time. Sometimes. Most of the time. Peace.